Hello urban farmers, and today what we're going to be doing is pickling these olives that a friend has given to me. I've never actually pickled any olives before, so it's going to be an awesome experience for me, and I hope it's for you. This episode is going to be a little bit different, only because we're obviously in the kitchen, we're not outside, we're not planting stuff. What I want to incorporate in this particular channel is not just doing stuff outside, but doing a little bit of culinary work as well. One of which, the stuff that we produce outside, let's try and keep it, sort of not throw it away. So try and preserve it, keep it inside and use it for as much as, or as long as we possibly can. One of those things, one of my friends today gave me olives. As you can tell, there's probably half a kilo or so there. I also had an olive tree. I didn't exactly know that you could pick them this green and that they would turn out like they are, pretty good. Next year I'll do that, but for the moment I've got heaps of olives that I can work with and that I can pickle. Now my jar, which is just, I don't know if you can tell there in the pot, it's actually getting sterilized. I'm just cooking it essentially. I can hear the water boiling, so I'll just turn that off. But essentially what that does, it just boils the jar, because I had other vegetables in there. I washed it, boiled it, it just sterilizes it, and there's no contaminations or anything like that. Okay, so for the first, so there's a bit of a recipe to this. I am in no way an expert into this, so what I'll share today is just the first steps. So say the first month of this process, and really the first month is very, very simple. So I'm actually communicating with my friend as I'm making this video, and he's basically just sort of like telling me what to do, because he's done this many times before, so I'm going to trust his advice. And what he says is, for about 4 to 6 weeks, what you want to do is you want to take the bitterness out of the olives. And if you've ever tried olives straight off the tree, you'll be spitting those things out there, because they are nasty as. So you want to take all that bitterness out, and the way that you take that out is to, whether you've got a jar or some sort of a plastic container or something along those lines, you want to put some clean water in there. So you want to put some tap water in there. You put your olives inside, and then you put salt inside that. Now the salt just makes sure that it cures. It does sort of pull the stuff out of the olives, but mainly it protects it from not going bad. Similar to some of the videos that I'll do down the track, is when you cure meat, you put salt around the meat. It's just to cure it, to make sure that there's no bugs and nothing else that can survive. Pretty much exactly what happens with these olives. So you want to put salt in there just to make sure that the olives don't go off while they're in the water. Now what you do, you put you put quarter of a cup of salt per liter of water. So what you want to make sure is, you want to make sure that all of your olives are submerged in water. So you want to make sure that they're submerged and there's enough water in there, and none of them are basically floating. And if you need to compress them down or cover them with something, do that. So I'll read out what he's actually written to me. So obviously the first step, I should say the first 4 weeks, is just to add salt and water, and you need to change that daily. So every day you need to throw that out, put new water in there and new salt. I mean, it's a little bit of a process, but if you're willing to go with it, through with it, you'll have some really nice olives at the end of all of that. So let me just read out what he said, and hopefully this sort of puts a little bit of this in perspective. At least you know what you will need to do later. I'll make another video when I actually do the other steps down the track, but just for the moment, I'll read it out so you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so he goes, put a quarter cup of water per liter. So when we're doing this for the first 4 to 6 weeks, or at least until the bitterness is gone, then either marinate in a mix or put in a 1/8 liter brine and seal. Initial step may take 4, 5 or 6 weeks or more, depends on your olives, obviously. So you just might want to make sure that the bitterness is gone. And he also recommends that you taste one after the 4th week, and then you will really know whether the bitterness has gone or not. Trust me, try one when they're like just off the tree, you'll know what bitterness is, and then try one 4 weeks after that, 5, 6, and you know when bitterness goes away. Okay, so and he says basically change the brine every second day until you're basically ready to seal. Once you seal it, you can stay for quite a few months, I would assume. And I suppose there's probably more fancier recipes out there. If you want to follow some more fancier recipes, by all means, Google is your friend. At the moment, I've just got someone that can actually help me through the process because I see them, regularly. So I'm just going to go with this, and I'll let you know how this all turns out. I'm pretty excited about it because I've never actually pickled olives previously, so this is something that I am genuinely excited about. One thing that I have done before, actually one thing that I've done many times before, is basically preparing meat. So basically smoking meat, or whatever you want to call it, drying it, curing meat, yes. So I've done that plenty of times before, and the process, surprisingly enough, seems to be very, very similar. Apart from the end bit, obviously, you've got to finish off the olives in some way, while the meat and the olives tend to have a very similar sort of starting point, but obviously they, one being a vegetable, the other one being a meat, they'll separate their own way eventually, won't they? Okay, so let's do this. I'll walk you through step by step of what I do, and hopefully we can get the show on the road. Let's do this.
You know what, we've all been through that kind of
Now once you've washed the olives, the next thing you want to do is just want to pick out the bad ones so you don't contaminate your whole batch. This one here was a good candidate. Yeah, that one there was a good candidate because it's got a little bit of a blotch. We'll remove that and we'll put it in the jar. Alright, so what I'm doing at the moment is pretty much just taking these little stem things off. There isn't too many of those, so most of them have been picked really well. I don't think you really need to do this, to be honest. It's just something that I'm doing and I just feel better about it. The one thing you probably want to do from my short investigations, if you want to call it that, is that you may want to actually you may want to crush these. So if you crush them a little bit, that means that you break their flesh, and it'll be a lot quicker for the salt and all that sort of stuff to get into the flesh, and just to sort of take out all the bitterness, rather than the bitterness coming through the flesh. I also personally like to eat these as whole, not when they're mangled, because remember, these things actually, when it's all done and dusted, they will be pretty soft, so I want them to be intact when I eat them, when they're soft. Obviously, if you have kilos upon kilos upon kilos of this, you're not going to be this precise about, So when I mean mangling them, this is a good example. See how it's just, the flesh is just opened up, pretty much you can do that. I'm not even going to bother using that on there for a sec, because I've got a fair few other ones. You can see what type of time-consuming process this is. Only this, little bit of olives, which is, half a jar or something, a quarter of a jar. Took me about 5, maybe 10 minutes. If you've got like a massive bunch of these, I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't even bother. I would just stick it all. You might even be doing it in like plastic tubs rather than this. I mean, who's going to be changing water for the next, month or two? If you have, 200 of these. I mean, that's just not realistic. Okay, now that we have this, what I'll do is I'll definitely put about 1 litre of water in here. I don't even know how much does this actually hold? It probably holds about 2 liters of water. So I'll put about 1 liter of water, or just over halfway, or more than halfway. I'll put it till about there. But I won't just chuck the salt in there, because if I just chuck the salt from the top, yes, I can mix it if I wanted to, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to dilute the salt a little bit in a little cup, just so the salt is mixed with water when I mix the salt with the water. Okay, so I've got my measuring cup. I've actually got a half a cup here. Obviously, if I fill half of the cup, it's going to be a quarter. If I fill half of the cup, it'll be a quarter. And I've just got some normal salt. It's nothing fancy. So I'm just going to put the salt in my cup. All right, so I've got half a cup, as you can see there. I should say half of a half cup. So I'm going to put that in my container, mix a bit of water. You can get yourself a spoon of some description and just mix it up. You know, just so the salt dissolves in water for as much as it possibly can. Doesn't have to be super fancy, super anything, it just needs to semi-dissolve, so when you chuck the salt in there, it's just, you know, it just doesn't clog up at the top and it doesn't go down. So just a reasonable amount, I reckon that's, you know, give or take, probably half a litre rather than a litre, but that'll do. And now I'm just going to pour all my salt in there. I just, despite my efforts, there was still a little bit of salt stuck. Alright, that's good. Perfect. I'll chuck the top onto it. Remember, we've boiled this, so it should be sterile. If you want to, you can actually give it a bit of a whirl, just so the salt and all that sort of stuff mixes properly. A lot of them are, you know, sort of going to the top, and eventually I think what happens is they sink down. And we'll change the water and all that sort of stuff with new salt tomorrow. And the process repeats every single day for the next 4 to 6 weeks. Now, let that be end of this episode. I accidentally touched the dishwasher. Let that be the end of this episode, and I'll come up with another video very shortly, and I've got a few in pipeline. So, well, up until then, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the upcoming video. If you've got anything to add, maybe if you've got a better way of doing it or easier way of doing it, please put it in the comments below. If you liked this or you think it's simple enough, something you can try at home, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already. I think it'll help myself and the wider urban farmer community. I really want to grow this as a community. It's not really about me, it's about all of us. It just happens that this channel can bring all of us together, and especially the people that are in Melbourne. I just don't see too many people posting regular videos on gardening in Melbourne, and I want to fill that gap, because I feel like there's so many of us that love gardening. There's just not enough of us to build this beautiful community that we can potentially have. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.